everybody. Thanks for having us. As was just mentioned, I'm Charlie Kaplan. I'm the VP of Product at Audiomack. At Audiomack, I think about the whole product roadmap, the whole strategy, all the way from who our users are, what they're telling us about what they want, through sort of designing the products that they need and ultimately measuring whether or not those worked. And that's a big part of the inspiration about why we're talking about onboarding, why we're talking about retention, is those fit very snugly into the path that I kind of own at the company. You'll hear a lot here about what we do with MoEngage, with Aaron at MoEngage, but sort of couched within the sort of bigger understanding of what our product is, which is itself kind of couched within this larger image of who artists are and who listeners are, which is fundamentally kind of the core thing we care about at our service, but I will get into that a little bit later.
And I'm Aaron with MoEngage. Just to tell you guys a little bit about who we are, we're a insights-led engagement and retention platform. And ultimately what that means is, obviously there are a lot of platforms out there that do SMS, mobile, push notifications, in-app messages, email, etc. How we're different is that we've actually bolted on an analytics platform right within the engagement solution, so growth marketing teams don't have to move between different tools and can get the insights they need to actually set up their campaigns and launch journeys, launch campaigns right from the same pane of glass. So that's a big place that we're different from others out there. And ultimately too, we're applying a lot of AI and machine learning to that data that we have. So we're essentially helping the growth marketing teams really augment their creativity and just be more effective in their campaigns. So just as a quick snapshot of who some of our customers are and what scale we're currently operating at. Again, we have about 1,200 customers today currently globally. If you guys want to find out more about what others in the market are saying about us, definitely check out Forrester, Gartner. We're in both recent reports on either cross-channel communication or mobile marketing. And also definitely go to G2 Crowd and Gartner Peer Insights if you want to see what your peers are saying about us and honestly any other vendors in the marketplace. Also too, want to announce last week, we just raised a Series E from Goldman Sachs. So again, I think that just validates that this is a space that customers really need capability in this area, and again, we're really happy to announce the fundraise. And with that, over to Charlie to talk about Audiomack and why all of you guys are here.
Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that you folks don't know what Audiomack is to give a sort of cast a wide net here. So Audiomack is a streaming music service for iOS, Android, and we're also on the web. And we're unique in that we serve both artists and listeners. So think of us a little bit like a YouTube or a SoundCloud, where artists can both upload music to the platform, and also listeners can then listen to music on the platform, which contrasts us from plenty of other folks you may be familiar with in the music space, like, let's say, Spotify or Apple Music, where it's really kind of one-sided. The music comes from distributors, and they're fundamentally serving one type of user, which is the listener. This is really significant for talking about what we're about to talk about in this presentation, which is onboarding, which has to do fundamentally with understanding who your user is, what it looks like when they survive and indeed succeed on your platform, and then kind of trying to reverse engineer that through how you message them, how you personalize the platform, and sort of at its very core, like how you define success for them. Maybe we'll hit the next slide.
Sure.
So to break those two users down, they sound different, right? But fundamentally, they're defined, they're linked inherently. Artists have a core goal. That core goal is to get music to their listeners. They're happier when they have more listeners. They're less happy when they have fewer listeners. Listeners want to connect with music that they love. That's what defines a listener as a listener. And so as a result, when you think about both who a listener is and who an artist is, you're kind of looking at the same thing from two different angles. You're looking at the success of getting plays, right? Again, it's really just the same thing seen from two different perspectives. An artist uploads music and wants to get that music played, and our objective is to make sure that music gets played by people who are going to be interested in it. That core observation, sort of understanding our user types, and then later on being able to build experiences and indeed sort of to initially market to folks, that's like our North Star. And we understand that very clearly. We can look at almost everything that happens within Audiomack through the perspective of, are people successfully discovering music that they want to play a ton? Thinking about music in this way has led Audiomack to become really one of the most significant music services in the world. We have about 25 million monthly active users. If you go to the App Store, Play Store right now and look in the music category, you'll find us in the top 10 music apps. And I really attribute that fundamentally to understanding our particular user types, both on the artist side and on the listener side.
I was going to add something. If you guys go download Audiomack right now, you can actually find Charlie. Charlie is an artist on Audiomack. So just something, if you guys want to listen to Charlie like outside of this presentation context, actually singing, check it out.
Yeah, this presentation is like a Trojan horse for my own music career. Trying to get out of this product thing and like be a rock star. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so if you understand for Audiomack, like our two core user types, the way we've approached this is each one of them deserves an onboarding strategy that fundamentally understands their objectives. Artists need an onboarding strategy, and listeners need an onboarding strategy. And for the purposes of this conversation, we're just going to talk about listeners and how we get messages to listeners. But marketing to artists could be like an entirely different conversation that hinges on the same sort of core insights, but has to be treated in an individuated manner to really get right. But for us, onboarding to listeners means, as I kind of mentioned a moment ago, thinking about what a really successful listener on our platform is, a successful user on our platform. I hope that that is sort of coming across as something that could be sort of generalized too, on any platform where you're building. Understanding what a successful user looks like is also a way of describing what sort of the core value of your platform is. And so for us, a successful listener is a listener who listens regularly, which is to say, sort of to break that down into an abstraction, is to say that they fire play events to our messaging services, our analytics services, and our backend regularly, right? They continue to do it. They do it increasingly over time up to some ceiling, and they stick with us, right? That is a way to understand that a user has found music they like on our platform. And by looking at sort of play events specifically, we're able to then understand, okay, what users are falling off and what users are actually sticking. So this slide right here is a kind of a fascinating, at least to me, sort of roadmap to going from understanding the sort of real-life version of your users to getting to what an onboarding journey really looks like. So for us, right, to use us as a case study, the way our discovery process for this began was just by getting listeners into the door, right? Let's get folks on the platform and listening to music. The first step on Audiomack's onboarding, for example, is to ask folks what kind of music they like, and then to expose them to a ton of music, and then almost treat that like an implicit survey, get them listening to music on the platform. Because each play on the platform is tracked on MoEngage, it's tracked on Mixpanel, it's tracked on our own first-party backend, we can then look at, okay, show us the group of users who are successfully, consistently listening to music. Those folks are going to be the users who are retained. Show us the folks who are coming to listen to music and then are not returning. That's how you understand preferences, the behaviors, the sort of life cycles of these individual users. You need to remember that information later on because you want to build dedicated experiences to serve, let's say, the successes or the deficiencies in either of those cases. And then, just to sort of use an example within this, leveraging play data and then understanding signal user preferences is where kind of like the fun and the magic of onboarding kind of comes in. So we're a music service, so we're built around plays. And plays have within them implicit a ton of other information. They have a location where the person listened to it. They have a genre. They have they have a ton of tags like which we assign to music, like the mood or like the activity you might want to associate with it. There's the artist. There's a specific song name. There's an album. Each of those are are properties of a particular play, and leveraging those properties to then create onboarding campaigns is kind of where all of the personalization, all of the sort of branching paths that lead a user to success kind of originate from. So, I generally think of this as like an epistemological question, which is to begin with, what do you actually know? Do you know anything about your users at all? Once you do, leveraging that knowledge to then say, okay, folks who have expressed this particular preference, we should then follow that up with more of the music that they're showing us that they like, versus if they showed us something else, taking them elsewhere. So if we go to the next slide.
Yeah, real quick, I guess
yeah.
it'd be great if you could tell people a little bit how you guys use Mixpanel, because are there any Mixpanel users in the house? Okay, yeah,
Nice.
got a few. But I think it'd just be good just to illustrate how the two, our two platforms work together. So
Absolutely. So we've been users of Mixpanel for, I guess, about 3 years now. And it was one of the first things that I decided to sort of go after I joined Audiomack. It was one of the key things that I was thinking about is, can you make decisions at all unless you have a means by which to know what your users are doing? Everything is a hunch unless you have like data that describes what users are up to. So we have about 3 years of data describing our users in Mixpanel, which is a ton of data, which both can be used to sort of say, let's look at historicals for users and understand what they've done in the past, but also it's sort of very refined as a way to track our users coming into the platform. And big part of the reason why we started a conversation with MoEngage in the very first place was because we wanted to find a platform which both had its own very strong business intelligence, like its own analytics platform, but which integrated very well with our historical data, which was all stored within Mixpanel. So as a result, on day one, it was like a very set it and forget it relationship. We had a ton of cohorts, a ton of data, which we could then subsequently use to target for onboarding, and then use all of the very sophisticated ways that MoEngage sends messages to then set up onboarding campaigns.
awesome. Well, yeah, let's jump into taking a look at the actual onboarding journey that we're running right now with you guys, and maybe you could kind of talk us through it.
Yeah, so what you'll see here is this is the sort of core branch of how our onboarding path really works.
And I should say before you jump into it, one of the things that's interesting is when we first got together and started working together, you guys were using Mixpanel's messaging service, which had been end of lifed.
That's right.
And so you were kind of stuck with point campaigns, right? So this
Exactly.
whole idea of like a user journey was possible, but like you almost had to put it in an Excel spreadsheet first,
Right.
to figure out what it was going to be, and then go build the campaigns.
Yeah.
So actually doing it, like building out a proper user journey, like visually, was a key advantage.
It was
right?
brutal.
Yeah.
It was way too much to keep in your head at one time. Very atomized. So what you're seeing here is like the core branch of our onboarding journey. And each of these sort of orange bubbles represent an opportunity for like a proliferation of variation. So what do I mean by that? When your user installs the app, we wait a day. That first day is an opportunity for us to collect data on the user. They've gone through our onboarding. They've sort of explicitly expressed to us what kind of music they like through the onboarding, but they've also implicitly expressed the kind of music they like in our onboarding by listening to music. So when you arrive at this trending artist notification, the trending section of Audiomack is an editorial list of top songs, which can be broken down in a ton of different ways. It can be broken down by genre, for example. We have it broken down in a ton of different genres. So at this very first orange bubble, there's an opportunity for a test. Let's not just send the sort of general list of all songs in trending to all users. Let's use the information that we got in that first white bubble, via those properties to figure out what works the best. And we've done a lot of really interesting experimentation through this stuff, which has led to some of the most actionable strategies that we've taken away from learning about onboarding. So two instructive examples of properties of the play event are genre and geography. And so we ran an experiment where after that first day, we sent, based on where a user was playing from, personalized recommendations of playlists broken down by country. So we'd say, hey, here are the top 100 songs in the US, here's the top 100 songs in Nigeria. Based on where you're from, you would receive that particular notification. And that was an incredibly popular notification in some countries and not in others. We also ran another test where we said, based on the genre of music you listen to on your first day, let's then send you more music from that genre, the trending lists broken down by that genre or less. And once again, we saw that broken down in, some of those notifications did worse than baseline and some of them did dramatically more. The dance hall push notification, for example, reggae music, performed way better than the baseline, whereas several other genres performed way worse. So part of where this becomes challenging is it turns into like a huge permutations and combinations equation, where you're like, okay, for each of these junctures, I could have, for each of my properties, an incredible number of variant messages that I could be sending, and that's too much for like a human being to try to oversee, or even like a team of human beings. And so one of the things that we're really excited about leveraging through MoEngage is how that can be automated, which I think is what we talk about on the next slide.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Well, we actually want to talk a little bit about the results of just getting Audiomack from kind of point campaigns to actually a proper user journey that starts to weave in some machine learning. I mean, ultimately, these are the results we were able to get for you guys. So, and with making note of that final bullet, which everybody wants, is how do we get more people to actually buy? I mean, again, engagement is great, ads are great, but at the end of the day, if somebody's going to drop, what is it, $9 a month for you guys, or $10 a month?
5, yeah.
Oh, it's 5. Okay. I mean, basically, if we can get somebody to $5 a month, that's the ultimate win. So I don't know if you want to talk through these, Charlie, but then we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what you're seeing here really is the switch from, as Aaron said, from working from point campaigns to having these branching paths, which saw like a very clear and specific benefit to us. And a ton of that has to do with figuring out how different campaigns work differentially for different people. And I just want to also point out that we're going to get to talk about premium trials a little bit later in this conversation. That may seem like a little further on in a user's life cycle than just onboarding, which can often be defined just as activating a user, the path to retaining a user. But we really think about it as being like a key and integral part of the onboarding strategy. If we're not putting folks on a path ultimately to buy a subscription, then we're aiming in the wrong direction.
The other thing too that obviously this is a partnership that we have, and there's always work to be done, right? There's more optimizations to be had, there's more experiments to be run, and just to paint a picture for where the two of us are going next in our respective teams, within MoEngage and within Audiomack, really it's taking advantage of machine learning. So doing things like, when is that best moment to send? And so, for example, in that onboarding flowchart that we showed you, can we take a push notification and say, okay, you've got a 72-hour window in which to send this versus making it a static 1 day. And then let the computer figure out, okay, is it 16 hours? Is that optimum? Is it a day and a half? What is the optimum level? So really leveraging machine learning and, again, even taking it a step beyond and making predictions. Obviously, best channel. So, should it be an in-app or should it be an SMS message? Should it be a push notification? And again, auto-optimizing for that based on the user's preferences. Also, too, best message or sequence. So is it a sequence of push notifications? Or is it a push plus an in-app, wait a day, do an email? Or is it 2 emails and a push? So ultimately leaning on machine learning to start taking that creativity that you might have within your growth marketing teams and some of the hunches that you guys have in addition to the data and saying, hey, we're going to run 5 different essentially segments of a user journey and we're going to see which one performs the best. And then ultimately just, what's the best device to send it on? Is it mobile? In the case yours, I think that's what, 95% of your users. But for others, it might be web as well. So yeah, let's talk about transactional notifications.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've just talked about basically is a messaging cadence which we build out through MoEngage's dashboard. So, you think about a person in front of a computer literally putting together these logic trees of conditional logic, this cadence of messages, which ultimately We then optimize for using their technology to figure out what the best path to success is. But that's not the only way, nor is it always even the best way to engage users. I mean, for us, again, we're a music service. Folks come here to discover music. And one of the core things that they can do in Audiomack is that they can follow an artist. If we fail to tell a user who follows an artist when that artist comes out with new music, then it's hard to imagine if we even deserve to have an app at all. And it's really key for us to make sure that there's a huge risk reward there. If we fail to do that, we seem pretty useless, and users are less likely to see music that they love on the platform. But if we succeed in showing users music from artists they follow as soon as it's uploaded, we can beat every other streaming service in the world, which has to wait to get music from distributors, for example, and don't have the convenience of getting uploads immediately to their platform. So that's where transactional notifications come into play. That's where we really build something on our back end. And then we use MoEngage to do two critical things. One, which is to very, very quickly deliver those messages to users across whatever channel is useful to us. But then the second is to then report back on how those performed. So to give 3 examples of notifications that we send through this transactional message, there is the new music notification, which I just mentioned. When an artist uploads music, we automatically notify all their followers that an artist they follow has uploaded new music. That's one. Second one is when a user comments on a song, if someone were to say reply to that comment, we then send a notification, super standard, you've seen it on Twitter or Instagram. And then the third is if you follow or if you favorite a playlist, if someone adds new music to that playlist, we do a daily roundup where we say, hey, listen, there's no new music has been added to verified hip hop, come back and check it out. And we've seen very fascinating differential results across those different types of notifications. What's so interesting is that the greatest engagement that we see against transactional notifications is through social interactions. So our best performing transactional notifications are when someone replies to your comment specifically. It feels so personalized, it feels so relevant. It's one real other person talking back to you. Of the ones that I named, the one that performs the least well is that playlist roundup, which is interesting because the user has taken a personal, explicit action to favorite a playlist, but in hindsight, upon analysis, it's a bit fuzzier, right? It's not as much of a reflection of you or talking back to you, but rather sort of the general interest you've got in that playlist. Working through reporting is such a fascinating way to figure out what to then reinvest in, right? Learning this has been so instructive for us to know that the future of our product should really be built increasingly around social actions if we want to optimize for engagement. That's what's worked super well for us. So transactional notifications are fascinating because they also feel very core to the product experience. I mean, it really very much feels like the core utility of Audiomack that we tell you when an artist you follow puts out new music, which is great. I always think that the sort of purest, most evolved form of marketing is really indistinguishable from the sort of core use case, the product market fit of the product itself. And this is an amazing way to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's interesting too is a lot of times transactional messages are kind of born on the product and the engineering side. We need this functionality, but I think one of the things you shared with me is once you got these out of kind of that just mechanical mode and into MoEngage, we're actually able to see how they're performing. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh geez, nobody actually clicks on this one, or geez, everybody clicks on this one, and you start getting those insights to really define how you tune and craft your new strategy. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, cool.
So we mentioned premium earlier, and again, premium. Oh, got a little noise there. Premium may seem like it's sort of a bit further down in the user journey, and that's uniquely true for us. Audiomack, big part of our success is that we have a very robust free tier. We're ad supported. It's not required that you get a premium subscription on the platform, but we want to use both carrot and stick to get users over to that ultimately. And so what carrot and stick kind of mean for us is both us coming to the user and the user coming to us. So the user coming to us has to do with us placing strategically through our app lots of ingresses to our paywall. So if you try to dismiss an ad, or if you try to take an action on a premium-only feature, like let's say enabling hi-fi, or trying to download all the songs in a playlist at once, that then takes you to a paywall, and that has a defined conversion rate, which we can then personalize on afterwards. So if the most recent button you pressed that led you to the paywall was, let's say, related to hi-fi, then we will personalize the paywall to be reflective of hi-fi. We'll place that at the top of the paywall. We'll use a special icon to highlight it. It'll become very reflective of what the customer intent is. But also coming to the user is really critical, and that's where we have a very sort of similar onboarding style cadence of messaging that's related to if a user either has or has not encountered the paywall yet. So there are messages we send to users to try to get them to the paywall for the first time. And then there are messages we send to users after they see the paywall for the first time, and then forking continuously based on the subsequent actions they take. And that's been super successful for us. I mean, we've seen opportunities to personalize those paths just by laying it out graphically in the way that we can, that we kind of had never considered before. And sort of whiteboarding in that regard has been a major sort of breakthrough in how we think about marketing premium to our users, both within the app experience and also beyond it.
I mean, it really goes beyond A/B testing, right? Because it's like, okay, do I show them this in-app or do I show them that in-app? But like we were saying before, like you really have to think of steps in the journey and what's the content and what's the sequence in which that content is delivered and how does that actually impact the conversion? So I think that's pretty interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. It's completely true. The analytics side of this is like invaluable to us.
Let's talk about supporters. Now, supporters is something special at Audiomack. I'll let Charlie say a little bit about it, but funny story, when we were prepping for this presentation, I was like, oh, no, I know what it is. I get a really good thing that the audience is gonna love. This is like a virtual guitar case. It's open at the foot of a street performer out there strumming their guitar. People are throwing singles in there. Charlie's like, yeah, that's close, but not quite. So I'll let you say,
Right.
say what you said to me. So.
Right. So the thing you described is like a perfect example of what you can, of the limits of what you can do on a one-sided music service. So on a one-sided music service, it's totally possible to make a contribution to an artist. You just send the money back to the distributor or to the record label, and then they sort out later on. But there's no way to then sort of have the artist be able to reciprocate through the platform because their music was delivered through these fancy pipes of TuneCore or DistroKid or the services that ultimately serve all of the DSPs. Audiomack is different though. We have the benefit of both having the artist and the listener in the same place at the same time. And so we can create a bilateral experience between the two. So what supporters is the ability for a fan to give money to an artist, and then what we do is create an increasing number of exclusive experiences for that user. So one of the things you'll see here is, if you support an artist on Audiomack, you support a particular song or album. As a result, permanently thereafter, anytime anyone plays that song or album on Audiomack, they'll see your face associated with it. So I often think, rather than sort of being this busking analogy, I think a little more about, I'm from New York, so in Lincoln Center, there is something called David Geffen Hall, which is a big performance space. David Geffen, big music executive, gave a ton of money to Lincoln Center, and now permanently gets to be associated with that location as long as his is the endorsement related to it. So first of all, high value of clout. The second thing is we enable sort of exclusive messages only for supporters. So artists can send messages just to the folks who have financially contributed to them, and fans can talk back to them. And the third thing, which we're actually going to launch in a week or two, spoiler alert, is we're giving artists the ability to make unreleased music available only to supporters in the week or 2 weeks or however long they want before it comes out. So you get to create an opportunity to premiere music just to your biggest superfans, the folks who really want to support you. And it's such an exciting strategy for us because not only does it leverage a distinct advantage we've got as a platform, which is that we have the artist, we have the uploader themselves, which is super significant to us, to create experiences that other services can't create, but it also increases potential artist revenue rather than sort of strictly trying to get more listeners, but by diversifying their forms of revenue. So it's almost like we're doing business development for our artists themselves, and they're our salespeople. They'll go out into the world and say, hey, you should listen to this music, which is available prior to release through Audiomack to supporters. Now artists are making more money, listeners are getting access to early music, we're making fees off of this stuff. So it's a powerful strategy, but, or I should say this is not a strategy that we have done or that we have finalized a marketing strategy for, certainly not sort of an automated messaging strategy for. So one thing oftentimes when I come to presentations like this, I get a little annoyed because people just tell you about what they succeeded at. They never tell you about what they failed at. And they also never tell you like what they're trying to figure out. It's always just sort of this like, this worked, see you later. So, I mean, I think Aaron and I should just talk a little bit about like, this is a feature that's barely even totally launched. Like, let's talk about how we should make a strategy around it.
Yeah, and our teams have been talking, our customer success team and the strategic services folks have been working with the Audiomack team because this, as you guys can see, it presents a very interesting opportunity and also some unique challenges because you've got essentially a marketplace, right? You've got this two-way interaction, and then if somebody donates, by the way, I think you can donate up to $250.
That's true.
So like if again, talking about Charlie, trying to help him out, maybe get like a nice steak dinner tonight, go in there, give him $5. I'm kidding.
It's a cheap steak dinner.
No, I'm kidding. Well, if you get 3 people, I'll give you $5, but that's good. Of course, I don't know right now that the prices the way they are. That's for a drink, right?
That's true.
But I think what it proposes is this really unique challenge where you've got all these different ways of cross interaction. So a listener might give Charlie $5 and like, okay, well then you've got to prompt the artist. Like, I mean, the challenge that they have here is they're trying to get engagement from both listeners and artists, and one feeds the other. So it's how do you go back and forth and really start generating up and build this momentum and this flywheel with each of these different distinct user groups. The one thing that we've been talking a lot about is leveraging this intelligent path optimizer. So I've talked a lot about MoEngage and journeys, and we talked about the lift that you can get from that. But we're just now jumping into. Thanks, Caitlin. We're just now jumping into what you can do with machine learning. So actually painting these different paths A, B, and C, and putting out different content, different messages, different sequences, different weights of time, and actually branching those and letting AI automatically optimize for different data points. It could be, did the artist engage with the listener? Was there a premium subscription that resulted after 12 days, right? So giving you guys the ability to ultimately pick your metric, whether that's engagement, some kind of a conversion, and then letting the AI just sit there and run and tell you what's working and automatically start defaulting to the stuff that is and starting to score lower the stuff that isn't. So I think that's what kind of the next chapter for us is to work on that together and really get this supporters thing off the ground and think about all those possibilities within, again, that listener journey and the artist journey.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's once again, I mean, I know I sound like a broken record, but at the end of the day, that's about understanding fundamentally what does the artist want. They want to reach listeners, and of course they want to monetize against that. And what does the listener want? They want access to music that they love. And so, I think every slide in this presentation kind of speaks to, continually reiterating, pushing against that harder and harder and harder to try to continually satisfy each use case. And that's a sort of a North Star, like a never-ending journey that we stay focused on.
Yeah. Cool. I think we're right near the end. We've got about 4 minutes left. I know I think there's an event. Caitlin, is there an event right after this one? Okay. Anyway, we'll hang out if anybody has questions, certainly. But I think key takeaways, did you want to take us through that, Charlie, and just touch on some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it begins with understanding your user and understanding what success for that user is on your platform. And that's the user in the real world, like what they're really coming to you for, what's actually valuable about your service. Then it's about breaking that down. It's abstracting that into a core metric or a handful of core metrics which describe, right, what success is for that user. So in our case, a great example of that is plays. Plays are shared by artists and listeners, and that's a really good starting point to do everything afterwards. Once you've sort of broken a user down into like bits, which are sort of the events, and then subsequently the properties which describe those bits, then now you can move to this next stage, which is, okay, so what is the story that takes a user from being just someone who's curious about your product to being the version of them that succeeded, which you previously used to describe what success would ultimately be for you. And then finally, as Aaron has talked about, once you've begun on that process, then it's about optimizing. Then it's about figuring out which of the many ways that you can describe success on your platform is the one that actually resonates with the user themselves. And that's where a platform like this becomes, or sort of multiplies the amount of scale that you can achieve. So part of what that means is if you wanted to manage every possible branching path off of every possible event that you can use to describe each possible property, and then all the variant ways by which to deliver those messages at different times and on different platforms, that very quickly becomes like an exponentially difficult thing to manage personally. But to have a technology which can do that in an automated manner and to optimize for you just lets you save a ton of time, maybe like the most time that you can imagine. So hopefully that seems bigger than just music. Hopefully that seems more like a playbook really to build a strategy of your own.
Awesome. And I think as we wrap up here, I certainly want to invite everybody to check out hashgrowth.org. That's the growth community that we're building that all of you can be a part of, whether you're a customer or not. So we're just trying to take education, experience, learning like this to other folks in this growth community and just build a knowledge-sharing platform that we can all interact on. So again, thanks everybody for the time and appreciate you hanging out just before lunch.
Thanks, y'all.